Found a hidden camera in my bedroom. I just checked the footage to discover a horrifying secret. There was always something horribly unsettling about my room. I always just felt weird when I was in there, almost as if I was being watched. At the time, I brushed it off as nothing, assuming I was probably just getting the creeps since my family had just recently moved to an old farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. I assumed the farm was also causing the rotten smell coming from my room, but I was so wrong. I only realized something was awfully wrong when my dog, Sasha, refused to enter my room. I've always been extremely close with my dog. She's always by my side and always used to sleep in my room. But since we've been at this new house, she refuses to come anywhere near my bedroom. She was reluctant about going upstairs in general. Whenever we tried making her go up, she would just claw her way back downstairs. That was until last we heard a loud bang upstairs, followed by a symphony of vicious barking and growling. I've heard Sasha bark and growl plenty of times, warning signs to strangers outside, but this time, she sounded absolutely ready to kill. It made everyone promptly freak out and rush upstairs only to find Sasha was directing her attack at something in my doorway. We turned the corner, expecting to find a snake or maybe even an intruder, but instead we find nothing, absolutely nothing, thin air. We didn't know what to attribute the loud bang to, but my family preferred to just ignore that and call Sasha old and delusional. We had to rip her away from the doorway and shove her outside, and even then she clawed urgently at the door as if she felt the need to defend us from something. It scared me, but I avoided speaking up about it under the fear that my family would laugh at me and call me paranoid. I never could have guessed this would be my biggest mistake. A few weeks later, I'd just gotten home from school, and the house was empty since my parents were at work. I called for Sasha, not quite wanting to be alone in the house, and she came sprinting over before making herself cozy on the kitchen tiles. That was when I heard it. A loud bang coming from upstairs. Sasha immediately jumped up and began growling, pointing her body like an arrow at the staircase as if it were prey. I immediately felt chills run through my whole body. I bounded over to the kitchen and grabbed the biggest knife I could find, convinced that if I was armed, I could maybe overpower the obvious intruder. Sasha beat me to investigate the situation as she promptly ran straight up the stairs and left me in the dust. Fearing the worst for the slightly too confident dog, I ran up after her. To my utter shock, she bounded right into my room and dove straight into the back end of my closet, sniffing and snorting insistently on the wall behind my rack of clothes, even scratching. I sighed. Okay, maybe a mouse in the wall or something is that I presumed, but that was still so far from the truth. I walked up to where Sasha was snorting around and hesitantly pulled back the rack of clothes to find a square hole cut into the wallpaper. It was then that I realized the rotten smell wasn't because of the farm. There was something in my closet. It was door-shaped and could fit an average person, but was short enough that said person would have to crawl to enter. I at first did not realize it was a door. It doesn't really look like one, rather just a perfectly aligned tear in the wallpaper, but upon running my fingers along it and force shoving one in, I found it flopped forward and fell to the floor with a heavy clap. A cut out of my wall. I could see a light source inside this crawl space, along with tons and tons of boxes just stacked on top of each other. This seemed pretty tame, and it seemed to be the only thing in there from my view. I would have never gone in there myself, but Sasha zipped right through when she realized I wasn't running away from it and began sniffing around in there. I tried calling her out, but she just looked at me over her shoulder like a disapproving mother-in-law and continued her quest for interesting scents. Feeling like she was never going to get out, I was faced with the reality that I'd have to crawl in and get her out myself. So I did. The room was so small that even at my short height, I felt the ceiling brush my head every time I took a step. A few steps in, as I observed the stacks of cardboard boxes, I came across something. A blue sleeping bag. The bumps in the sleeping bag were what I first noticed. The sleeping bag looked unnaturally lumpy. Curiosity took over, and hesitating for a moment, I gently unzipped it. At first I only saw the lining, but unzipping more quickly let out an indescribable stench that filled the room, followed by the sight of severed fingers and feet at the bottom of the bag. I stumbled back, stifling a scream, my heart racing. The reality dawned on me. There were dismembered body parts inside the sleeping bag. Panic surged, and for a split second, I thought I might just run out of the house. But then, as if drawing me in, I saw an old-style video camera placed neatly next to the bag. Shaking, I crouched down and picked up the camera. It had a little flip-out viewing screen. To my astonishment, it turned on, and the battery was nearly full. I debated with myself whether to press play or to simply leave it. Before I could make a decision, the echoing sound of the front door slamming jolted me. Panic took over and I bolted from the room, camera clutched tightly in hand. It turned out it was just my mom, returning from work as promised. I immediately ran down to explain what happened desperately. She at first was skeptical, rolling her eyes and throwing around the word "really" a few times, before finally becoming convinced and following me up the stairs. She poked around in the room as well. We found the boxes to be full of normal attic junk. Old toys, figurines, blankets, and kitchen Tupperware. The sleeping bag and snacks were still there. When I presented to her the camera, my mom quickly said we had to view what was on it, so we rushed downstairs to plug it into the TV. The screen snapped on, showing the first tape. It seemed relatively innocent, showing just a mountain in the background. The cameraman zoomed in on the mountain, recording the rows of red blinking lights on the antennas at the top of the mountain before zooming out and giving a view of the street. Our street. He walks for a bit before stopping and turning to zoom in on our neighbor's house. He views them for a while before continuing to walk. At one point, the cameraman even points the camera downwards and zooms in on his own feet, which are covered in brown boots. The guy turns and finally his camera rests on our house. There's a sigh from the cameraman, and then the clip ends. Tap 2. The cameraman starts in a parking lot. He walks into a supermarket and begins browsing some watermelons towards the entrance silently. It's pretty boring, stretching out for a good 4 minutes or so, until suddenly he aims his camera up and zooms in on a cluster of people. It's unclear what he's focusing on until an elderly couple comes into view. I recognize them immediately. They're the couple that lived on the property before we moved in. The cameraman keeps his camera aimed at them for the rest of the video. He moves with them, keeping a safe distance, but he never loses sight of them. He follows them through the whole store and peeks over aisles to get shots of them, until after a few minutes, the clip ends abruptly. At this point, I was shaking with fear while trying to rationalize that hidden room. Maybe it was just old footage left from the previous owners, but that didn't explain the noise I heard, or the light being left on. No way the light lasted that long without being changed. None of this made sense, until I turned on the next tape. The third tape started out with the camera pointed downwards, shaking as the man walked. It's nighttime and it's very obviously the side of our house. The cameraman stops as he reaches the kitchen window and aims his camera right through the window pane, where the couple are playing music loudly and sipping wine happily. They begin to playfully dance with each other as the old man talks about moving up towards Canada. The rest of the clip is merely watching them. For the next 5 clips, it's just the cameraman spying on them, in dental appointments from their backyard, and at one point the cameraman slips through the door when it's left unlocked, and he begins poking around their items. At one clip, the first thing seen is the front of the house, the man waiting with a ragged breath in presumably a bush. It's nighttime, and he's very obviously excited for something. For the first time, we hear him talk as he whispers, "Come on," urgently. It's unclear what exactly he's waiting for until the old couple come outside to their lawn. The cameraman jumps up from a crouching position then, but then the couple is joined by 3 other people, a couple and a child. They're all carrying drinks and settle themselves in lawn chairs, clearly planning on spending the rest of the night lounging about outside. The cameraman practically slumps and sits down again. He watches them for 10 minutes until his camera points downwards. He has a gun laying neatly in his lap. The last clip the cameraman has of the couple is when they're moving. The final moving trucks come to get the last of their furniture, and the clip pretty much consists of the couple standing around outside complaining about how hot it is and barking orders at movers. I'm going to assume that the couple didn't survive that car journey. The next clip is of a real estate agent. I recognize her immediately too. She is the one who sold us the property. She's walking around surveying the stables and the exterior of the house. She opens her cell phone and makes a call to somebody about how dingy the place is and how she'll never sell the dump without some major flipping, and looks pleased when it seems she wins an argument. She then leaves and the clip ends. The next clip is of me. This time it's positioned from inside the room. The cutout door is obviously taken away, and the cameraman pokes his camera lens through my rack of clothes discreetly to film me. I'm walking around angrily, arguing on the phone with my dad about how he never comes straight home when he gets back in town. I remember that day clearly. I finally hung up on my dad and threw the phone on my bed before walking out. There were tons more of these videos of me sleeping, getting changed, playing with my dog in the garden. But they all ended with one thing. Right before every video ended, the camera would slowly point down, revealing a gun in his lap. The most horrifying thing is, that wasn't the last video. There's tons more with plenty of recent dates. I'm now scared there's going to be more in the future too.